Hello and welcome to our webinar with Katie Howard of Appalachian State University. Over the next hour, we will hear how Appalachian State has created a culture of research across campus. We will also hear a passionate testimonial for InfoReady Review and its ability of managing administration of internal research programs. Katie will also share detailed best practices for the operation of InfoReady Review's capabilities and how they have utilized them to their fullest at Appalachian State. So join us now as our webinar is about to begin.
Welcome everyone. My name is Carlos Mancada, Director of Client Services at InfoReady. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us for today's Peer Spotlight webinar. Our guest panelist today is Katie Howard from Appalachian State University. Katie is the Associate Director in the Grants, Resources, and Services Office. Now, we have an hour planned today, and Katie will be covering a few different topics during that hour. Included in that are some of the programs and processes managed by her office, including research resumption and related activities to COVID-19. Additionally, at Appalachian State, they have several units using the system, so Katie will be discussing how those relationships are managed. And also, Katie will be talking about some of the long-term plans for centralizing processes in one system. I'm going to turn it over to Katie Howard. Take it away, Katie.
Thanks, Carlos. I'm really excited to be with you all today. We started using InfoReady about 3 years ago at Appalachian in our Grants, Resources, and Services unit, which is essentially the research development unit within the Office of Research at Appalachian. And I am the super administrator at our campus, and it has really revolutionized how I go about my daily work. And so I'm always happy to take the opportunity to share with other people how we use InfoReady. And I feel like we've been relatively creative in how we've done that at our campus. And so I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to share that with you and engage in a conversation and dialogue with you all after my presentation about how we utilize InfoReady on our campus, how we've sort of disseminated the InfoReady love on our campus, and how I manage the relationships as the super administrator for our campus. So we can go ahead and get started. So next slide, please, Carlos. So I want to give you a little bit of context in case you're not familiar with Appalachian State. We are in North Carolina, in the western part of North Carolina, in the beautiful mountains, as you can see. We are a mid-sized, primarily undergraduate serving institution. We are a master's comprehensive institution as well. And we are part of the University of North Carolina system. So there are 17 schools that are a part of the UNC system, and we are one of those. We're in a rural location, as you might imagine, in Western North Carolina. Our college was established as a teaching college originally. And so at our university, there is a heavy emphasis on teaching, but research is growing in importance to our faculty that we're recruiting to campus, and it's really important for the student experience at Appalachian. So I work in the Office of Research, which is a centralized Office of Research, which means I serve everybody on campus. We have about 1,400 faculty, about 1,000 of those faculty are tenure track, and probably about half of those are super research and grant active. And so we serve everybody on campus from our Office of Research. And our Office of Research has 4 components. So Grants, Resources, and Services is where I sit. And we are, like I mentioned before, the research development part of the office, and we provide training and resources to folks and funding opportunities and strategic planning support for supporting the research endeavor at our institution. The other 3 units are sponsored programs, research compliance, and research data analysis. And so all of those 4 units together make up the Office of Research, and we serve our campus together. We are our research grants are about 14 million in grants and contracts annually. Give or take a few million each year. We do have some large awards that come in all at once, a few years at a time. So it fluctuates, but that's where we are. So we're pretty middle of the road as far as institutions go on that front. But just to give you a little bit of context about who we are so that you can sort of contextualize everything I tell y'all today with that in mind. Next slide, please, Carlos. So here's a brief overview of how we use InfoReady in the Office of Research. So we primarily purchased InfoReady to support our limited submissions process and our internal grants, which I imagine many of you utilize InfoReady for that same functionality. We have about 20 competitions a year that we run through InfoReady that fall under the category of limited submissions or internal grants. With the recent COVID-19 pandemic, we actually have added a couple of competitions that as internal grant programs. And so my position in particular, I handle the limited submissions and internal grants process. So this was super relevant to me when we ended up buying the system. And we have relatively recently started using it for nominations and awards in the Office of Research and calls for proposals for symposia and research events. We have probably about 3 iterations a year within our office for this purpose, but a lot of other units on campus utilize it for this reason as well. And then, as Carlos mentioned a minute ago, we utilize InfoReady to manage this resumption of research activity. And so I know that y'all have heard about this already from the webinar that happened last month, I believe, with LSU and Wilmington, University of Wilmington's folks presenting about using InfoReady and managing the process during sort of disaster situations. And so we have been, this has also fallen under my job description lately. And so hopefully we're not using it forever for this, but it has been really great to have as a resource for managing this process. We have been tracking and routing requests to return to research on campus through the InfoReady system, and also utilizing it for record keeping. So when people update documents like risk mitigation plans or contingency plans for if we have to go back a phase or something like that, we keep those documents updated in InfoReady, and that's been really, really critical. I've actually been spending a huge amount of my time lately using InfoReady for this thing. So I'm in the system almost every day, utilizing it for this, and it's been really helpful. So if anybody has questions about how we've been doing it at Appalachian, I know places are doing it differently and managing the process differently, but I'm happy to share more details about that if y'all are interested in it. Next slide, please. So one of the main things that I was asked to share with you all today was how we have sort of disseminated InfoReady across campus and the process by which we do that and how I manage that relationship. So the current level of InfoReady review that we have right now, we have 10 administrator roles. And so that has been sufficient for us up until this point. We're probably hanging out at max capacity right now. But what we have done is, in an effort to sort of cost share the annual cost of InfoReady and utilizing it, we have tried to promote it to other units on campus and to get them to sort of buy in to using the system. And when they buy in, what they are buying in is they're buying access to one administrator role, is how we have managed that process on our campus. And so you can see in this little pie chart here how we've distributed, how the administrator roles are distributed. So we in the Office of Research have 4 administrator roles reserved for our use. So I mentioned that we at the Office of Research manages is made up of 4 different units. So pretty much what that means is that every unit has their own administrator role access to the InfoReady system within the Office of Research, and they are able to utilize the system however they would like. So Sponsored Programs utilizes it they have a professional development program for research administrators across campus. And so they handle the applications for that program through the InfoReady system. Our research compliance folks handle some requests for things, and they toyed with using it for their IACUC review process at one point. We also have a direct reporting research institute for environment, energy, and economics that reports directly up to the vice provost for research. And so they have an access because they have an internal grant program. So they use InfoReady to manage that internal grant program. Actually, there's 2 internal grant programs managed by RIEEE. And our research data analysis unit has an access, but hasn't actually utilized the system quite yet. So we flip-flop that 4th administrator role between those and the Office of Research who need access to it at that point. Our super administrator role is actually, I said earlier that I was the super administrator, and I'm actually the human that manages that super administrator account. But our super administrator account is a generic email account, which has actually worked out super well, so that when we have a grad student or someone needing to support the management of a competition of some kind, we're able to do that relatively easily because that student has access to the login information for that generic account. And so that's how we encourage other folks to sign up and utilize the system as well. So we encourage them, if they're going to buy in to the system, that we set up that administrator role with a generic account, if at all possible, so that they can share that access within their unit with relative ease, because otherwise they'd have to have someone's access to their email information and their login information, which of course is not advisable. But it's fine if that's the only person that's going to be managing in the system. So the breakdown is other units, independent programs, and colleges. So we have 2 colleges that use the system right now. Our graduate college uses it to manage their graduate teaching awards programs, their graduate student research assistantship programs, graduate faculty awards, and grad student awards. So there's a nominations portal. They use it for nominations and reviews and selections for those awards, and then also for the grants and fellowships programs that they administer through the college. They do it that way as well. And then our College of Health Sciences also utilizes it, and our College of Arts and Sciences. So our College of Health Sciences right now is on an off-year rotation, but they have used it in the past for their internal and summer grants programs and teaching awards. Our College of Arts and Sciences currently uses it for our student and teaching internal grants, small internal grants, and awards as well. So those are the colleges that use the system. Our dream would be for every college to have an access, but we would need more administrator roles to do that. So we're in negotiations with the VPR and the Academic Affairs Unit to talk about how we might best reach everyone. The independent programs, we have some sort of random uses of InfoReady on campus. There is a academic leadership development program that is funded by the Office of the Chancellor, but it's administered by a small cohort of faculty and upper administrators. And they utilize InfoReady for applications to that leadership development program. We have a public school partnership mini grants program, and they utilize the system for that. We have other units on campus that utilize the system as well. So like our Office of International Education and Development, they have travel awards and scholarships and other grant mechanisms through their unit. So they use InfoReady to do that. They also use it to manage their teaching exchanges or visiting professorship programs with other partner institutions abroad. And so we really have spread out how InfoReady is utilized across campus. And so we would love to grow it. And so I think the reputation is growing on our campus of InfoReady. And the beauty of it is that now that we're 3 years in, everybody is much more comfortable with it, and they expect certain things to come through it all the time. So essentially all chairs and all deans have been exposed to the system and are familiar with it and comfortable with it. So how we do this is we promote the system to other units annually. Our VPR, our Vice Provost for Research, is super on board with this. So she goes around to Dean's Council and Chair's Council once a year and presents about InfoReady and encourages them to reach out to us for demos or more information if they have things that they would like to utilize InfoReady for. And then I go around and disseminate the information to like our communications liaison group. It kind of gets spread out informally through word of mouth with folks I work with, colleagues that I work with. And so that has been a really positive way that it's worked out. We've had some groups express interest, and so we've connected them with Carlos and other InfoReady professionals to get more in-depth demos. I do little brief demos where they come to my office and I show them what the system can do and how we use it. And sometimes we give them sandbox access to an administrator role, one of those Office of Research Flex admin roles, so they can see how it works and play around in the system before they decide to opt in. We charge $1,000 a year for our administrator access. So $1,000 gets you one administrator role. We've had talks with like the College of Arts and Sciences, for example, which is our largest college, about them potentially wanting multiple administrator accesses. So if they want that, we will accommodate them, but their cost would go up $1,000 per administrator access, and that is a recurring annual cost. So we've cost shared with about 6 administrators, so we get about $6,000 in support each year to support our InfoReady review license, and so that has worked really well. We can go ahead to the next slide. So I mentioned before that our dream, I have this magical unicorn on the screen here. My dream is that everything internal competition wise, whether it's scholarships, fellowships, awards, internal grants, limited submissions, all of these opportunities would live in one place for the whole campus. Can you imagine just sending everybody to one landing page to find all the opportunities that they could potentially apply for, even if at some point we get multiple iterations or multiple landing pages where if students could go to one and faculty could go to another, or so on and so forth. So it would be amazing for everyone on campus to utilize the system at some point. And so that's why we're sort of in this process of trying to negotiate something with academic affairs, where academic affairs would end up paying for the primary license for InfoReady instead of the Office of Research, and that we would just be one of the users. It would just be amazing. But right now, as we have some piecemeal buy-in, which has been really great to present. And what I do as the super administrator is I provide sort of support for those people, primarily the other administrators on campus. I share out information via email with those other administrators so that they have access to the webinars and everything like that. And also I try to do some basic troubleshooting to see if I can help them before they put in a support ticket with InfoReady. And I usually end up putting in the support tickets for them if they have a bigger issue, if I can't solve the problem. But they are able to, and I encourage them to put in their own support tickets whenever they need to. But I'm kind of their liaison for InfoReady. So as the super administrator on campus, I do that. And I imagine even if we moved away from the Office of Research being the primary payee for the system, that I would still remain the liaison and InfoReady contact on our campus. And so far that's worked quite well. All right, I think we can go to the next slide. And that's it. That's all the stuff in a nutshell that I wanted to share with you up front. And I really wanted to intentionally leave a bit of time for us to, for me to answer questions that you might have, or go deeper into things that are of particular interest to those of you who are on the call. So thank you all so much for your attention, and I hope that you found this helpful, and I'll take questions now.
Thanks, Katie. Much appreciated. Lots of good information there, especially on how you work with other units. That's something we frequently hear. And we did get several questions overall, so why don't we jump into Q&A? Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right, let's do it. So the first question was, do any undergraduate programs use InfoReady?
Do any undergraduate programs use InfoReady? Yes. So the college level programs, so the College of Arts and Sciences in particular has student grants that they offer, and so they manage that student grant portal through InfoReady. So undergraduate students or graduate students can apply through InfoReady. And so at the college level, yes, there are different uses for InfoReady that graduate students have access, undergraduate students have access to. The public school partnership program that I also mentioned, they have mini grants, and those mini grants are for student teaching students or for faculty who are partnering with public schools. And so undergraduate students have access to those as well. So yes, there are, and then there are undergraduate student awards as well, sometimes managed through the college level programs. So yes, we do have undergraduate instances on our campus for that.
Thanks. And just to add, I know other institutions are using InfoReady Review for various types of processes for undergraduate students. So I've seen things ranging from petitions to class waivers to residency waivers. So all kinds of things. Applications to undergraduate research programs. Quite a long list that I've seen, because some of the basic concepts of the system are you create a competition or an opportunity, and along with that it's the form builder and it's the workflow for the review process. So it can be easily adapted to various undergraduate student programs and processes.
And I'll also say that one of the game changers for us, or one of the critical things for us, is that we have single sign-on integration with InfoReady. And so students and faculty and staff just use their App State logins to access the system. And so, the system will generate a profile for them once they've logged in. And so that's been great that we don't have a ton of people using outside email addresses or anything to use the system, and they don't have to have a separate password or email. But we do have it set up so that other folks, like incoming graduate students, for example, can apply for those graduate opportunities using their Gmail accounts or something like that. But that has been a really key thing in making it easy for students and faculty and staff alike to use the system, is that single sign-on integration.
Oh yeah, it does make it much easier. No need to create another account or remember another password. And you get taken to a familiar looking page that you use to log in everywhere else. Katie, there's a question about the other units that are using the system. Can you elaborate a little bit more on those other units in your
Yes.
bar
So
graph?
I tried to touch on those, but yes, the other units that are using the system right now are our Office of International Education and Development. So our OIED office utilizes it, like I mentioned, for their scholarship portals and for their teaching exchange opportunities and for their travel awards programs. And so they manage all of those through InfoReady Review. And then the Academic Leadership Development Program, well, that's one of the independent programs. The other units that use it, the other administrative units that use it are, it's of course escaping me right now, but I can look it up really quick and get back to you. I'll have to log in and see what the other unit is. There's two of them that are, but I can only think of OIED at the minute. So I will look it up and tell you what the other one is in just a second. I can answer another question while I'm looking if that's helpful.
Yeah. So the question is, relates to the units and their access to the data. So, quote, do the other units have access to the data for the other competitions and funding opportunities that are not from their unit, or do they only see their data?
Great question. We only have it set up so that they see their data. And we have had recently an uptick in requests for data about specific colleges for internal grant programs that we manage, that I manage through our through the Office of Research. So like we have 7 internal grant programs right now. And so I often have the grant administrator from the colleges reach out to me and ask for data about how many applicants that they've had to those internal competitions in the college and how many awards and things like that. And I end up pulling that data for them instead of giving them access. But other administrators only have access to their own competition data. And if they request other data, we have to run it by the other administrators first, and we take those requests on a case-by-case basis. But we haven't had a ton of those requests lately.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, data and permissions is always an important topic. That actually is one reason why people do like having separate, distinct systems for their own units. So, is that normally one of the conversation topics when you're discussing using a system with other units?
It is. It is. And I just looked it up. The other unit that uses InfoReady is our Nationally Competitive Scholarships Office. And so they manage all of the big scholarships that students apply for. And so we have an internal process for selecting students who want to apply for those big nationally competitive scholarships. And they do like grant or application review, peer review in the system as well for that. And so that's the other unit that uses the system in a really unique way.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. If anyone has questions about that, feel free to type it in. Katie, we have a few more questions about how the admins are managed. The admin seats are managed. So first, how do you determine how much to charge other departments to have an admin role?
It is one flat fee. It's always $1,000. And we chose that amount based on how many administrator accesses that we had to offer and disseminate, and like how much we were looking to offset the cost of InfoReady. And we talked it out. We had an Office of Research sort of meeting with the directors and the people who would be utilizing the system to sort of talk it out and talk about how many administrator roles we wanted to retain for the Office of Research, which would translate to how much we would be willing to pay annually, and so how much we were looking to offset. And it ended up that math ended up working out to be about $1,000 per administrator access. We also, when we first bought the system, when we first bought into the system, it was suggested to us by InfoReady that we do this, that like other colleges and other folks who used InfoReady sometimes shared their administrator roles. Because when we first bought in, I was like, well, why do we need 10 administrator roles? And so that was one of the things that was shared with us, an idea. And so we also were put in touch with some other people, other users of InfoReady who charged an administrator access fee, and the average cost from those folks that we ended up talking to was about $1,000 at the time. And so we went with that. It seemed to work out and add up to what we were hoping to sort of offset the cost with.
Thanks for sharing that background. It's always interesting to see how you get to a point, right? Because there's a lot of things that you're probably weighing, right? The size and budget of a unit, or how much they, the volume they might be running through the system.
Yeah.
So here is another question about managing the admin accounts. Can you talk a little bit more about the generic super admin account? How did you create it? How was it used, etc.?
So InfoReady set us up with a super administrator account. They asked us who we wanted to have the super administrator role. And so initially it was me personally. It was my personal email address that was the super administrator, and we chose that because I was the person who managed the limited submission competitions and the internal grants program. And since we were going to use InfoReady pretty much only for those programs to get started, like that was why we bought into the system, because I was so overwhelmed with managing that process. It was just very tedious and sprawled out before. So it made most sense, since I would be the one utilizing the system almost on a daily basis, for me to be the super administrator. About a year ago, we decided to switch it to the generic account, so that everyone in grants, resources, and services could just access that and have the access to super administrator records and data and all of that. Because if I ever left the university for any reason, it wouldn't be lost with me going away. So the generic account is quote unquote safer for the retention of all that data for those internal competitions. And then InfoReady helped us transition all of those things from our historical data to the new super administrator account. And so that super administrator has access to everything. So I have access to all the things. And if anybody makes me a co-administrator, I can go in and check out any issues that they may be having. I can manage the user roles of people and see like what sort of applications they've submitted in the past. And so I have access to all of that as the super administrator, which helps me troubleshoot with folks if they're having trouble with their administrator roles. But so that's a little bit about the super administrator setup, but I didn't make it. So I didn't set it up like that. InfoReady gave me its super administrator powers. And then we just sort of went through the process of deciding who would do it. And it was pretty easy, cut and dry for us to make that decision up front.
And to add one thing to that, this is more of a general comment. I know other institutions have set up generic accounts for their office or their individual unit, and have worked with their IT team to have a net ID associated with it. That way it can be single sign-on. So if you're going that route, you definitely have to work with your IT to get the correct permissions for that account. And then in InfoReady, you can select the correct user role in the system for it. Now, not all IT teams are accommodating on that front. So some will gladly do it, and some have you jump through hoops. I've seen both. Katie, here is a question that relates to the number of units using the system. And the question is, do you have microsites or just one central landing page?
We just have one central landing page. We don't have microsites currently.
And for those that are unaware of what a microsite is, a microsite is a landing page off of the main homepage, and then the content on that microsite can be tailored towards the specific audience that will be going to that page. All of the competitions that are associated with that competition will be listed on the microsite homepage. So you will only see the associated competitions that are almost, it will basically filter it down. And on top of that, you can associate administrators with a microsite so that they're only operating on that microsite. Just want to provide a little more context to that. Okay, here is another one related to implementing the system and getting campus buy-in. So, quote, could you speak a little bit about the initial implementation process for setting up InfoReady on your campus? Was there a steep learning curve? Did you start with one particular program and then expand from there?
So the initial implementation process was pretty easy. I'd say the most difficult thing was, starting from nothing. We had to build all the templates and run all the competitions one time before it became super duper efficient. But so it was a little time intensive at the beginning to sort of get everything set up in InfoReady, and also take some time to play around and figure out how we were going to adjust from our old way of doing it to the new way of doing it and what we wanted it to look like. And so we had lots of meetings about, did we want people to upload documents primarily, or did we want them to fill in text boxes primarily? But really, it was not a huge learning curve. We had some pretty good training sessions and access to resources with InfoReady once we bought into the system. And I had one of my primary roles before was building web forms to collect this information through the old way that we were doing it. And so I was pretty comfortable building web forms and like Google Forms before we moved to InfoReady. And really InfoReady was pretty similar to that, and fairly intuitive in that process for me. That has been different with every administrator that I have worked with to get acquainted with the system. It kind of depends on their level of comfort with or experience building like web forms, for example. But those folks who have had experience doing that, collecting data in some way other than email, like through some form building system, pretty much are able to get the concept of InfoReady fairly quickly and use it. We did, do some trial and error stuff to figure out and test all the different functionalities, but it wasn't a super steep learning curve. And again, like I mentioned, we originally bought InfoReady for me to manage limited submissions and internal grants. And so I really wanted to have a solid handle on those things before we tried to share the system with other people. I wanted to have some experience and to be able to knowledgeably speak about how the system worked to others when they asked. So we pretty much stuck with our original plan because I needed to get my feet under me. I needed to get my systems more efficient. And so we really initially only used it for internal grants and limited submissions. But pretty quickly, probably within the second semester of using InfoReady, we started talking about it, at least with other units in the Office of Research, and sort of growing it within the office itself to figure out what we could use InfoReady for and all that sort of thing. So it kind of grew from one primary use but primarily because that's what I felt the most comfortable with, being the super administrator. I wanted to have a little bit of experience and feel comfortable in the system before I was responsible for selling it to other people on campus, essentially.
And now you're a guru.
And now I'm a guru.
So, on that last point, we have a question which asks, what is the biggest selling point when approaching other units for buy-in? I.e., have you found any specific selling point to be the tipping point that resulted in them buying and adopting the system?
It's almost always related to efficiency because almost all the administrators that I talk to who are managing some sort of competition, whether it's a grant competition, whether it's an award nominations system, whether it is whatever it is, I'm talking to people who have done this a different way. And the different way is almost always like an amalgamation of 3 or 4 different systems. Like they might be using our learning management site to provide access to materials, or they may be using Google Drive to provide access to materials. They may be having a rubric that they send out to people via email attachment. They may be collecting applications via email. They may be collecting applications via Google Forms. And so when I tell them administrator to administrator, I'm like, it's all in one place. Everyone goes to one place. Applicants, you, the reviewers, everyone goes to one place to do all the things. And you can even award and notify people from the system itself. You don't even have to send an outside email. It's magical. That is almost always the selling point that tips people over, is the consolidation and the efficiency of the system. As an administrator, and I'm talking to a virtual room full of administrators, I assume, that is like the sexiest thing about InfoReady, is that it's all there in one place, and it's amazing.
Never had that adjective related to InfoReady review before. So,
oh.
So that's good. We can, when on our movie poster, we'll just have
InfoReady is sexy to administrators. That could be your tagline.
Yeah. So there's another question that's related to kind of standardizing parts of the system and new admins using the system. So the question is, do you share templates among the units, or is there a standardized format that you can recommend for similar competitions? So that, this can definitely help with the learning curve.
Yeah, we do share templates. We make our templates available across administrators. Honestly, though, I really encourage folks I do encourage people to use the templates if they find that they are similar enough to what they need, but really also encourage administrators to spend time in the create mode and sort of seeing what the system can do and building it custom for what they need, because everybody's needs are slightly different. But we do share access to templates, and sometimes folks ask if I can make a recommendation for a certain template, but I pretty much use the templates I build, so I can only speak knowledgeably about the ones that I build. So we do make them available. They are there. Any administrator can utilize the templates that we already have in existence, but I really encourage people to build their own, or at least be comfortable to build their own, because of all the possibilities for InfoReady.
Thanks, Katie. It's definitely a little bit of standardizing whatever you can, and then having the flexibility to accommodate the needs of the specific programs being managed, or offices that need certain bits of information. So the next question is completely different from the most recent questions, and they're related to IACUC. There's actually a couple. So can you talk more about how you are using InfoReady for IACUC? How far did consideration of using InfoReady Review for IACUC use go, and were other platforms considered? It's a lot I just threw at you, so let me know if you want me to repeat it.
Okay. So we actually don't use it for IACUC anymore. We started using it and we shared access with our research compliance folks. We had a lot of meetings. They did some trial runs with it to collect information about IACUC. And then even once they decided they weren't going to use it as the official quote repository for IACUC, even after they decided that, for a little while they did utilize the system for collecting requests or protocol requests for IACUC. The deal breaker ended up being that we couldn't remove people's access to IACUC protocol information, like once they rolled off the IACUC review board. And so we actually don't use it right now. Other systems were considered, and I think that they ended up going with a different system. I don't even know off the top of my head what they use now. But there was extensive talk about it, and we still come back to it every now and again. And I think that there were just some limitations with the level of InfoReady that we have, where I think we're a silver level user. And so we just couldn't customize everything to the greatest extent that we wanted to, but pretty much when they were piloting it and testing it, it functioned very similarly to other competitions or review processes. People submitted a request based on whatever sorts of fields that the research compliance folks wanted them to submit, whatever information they wanted to submit. And then they were assigned to a review panel for review, and then a decision was made. The other issue that came up was what to do about revisions to IACUC protocols or extensions or slight modifications to protocols. How would we manage that without being able to send it back to an applicant for addition or amendment or something like that, and then being able to send it back through the review process without having everybody submit something completely new. So those were some of the hangups with why it isn't currently being used for it, but they did talk about it, and we do still revisit that conversation pretty frequently because we would like to be able to do it and have everything, operate through the Office of Research in one place if at all possible.
So I have a question. Mm-hmm. The first issue you mentioned was access to the review. So the people on the review panel having access to their historical reviews was a deal breaker.
Yes. Got it.
And but you still want to keep a record of it. You just don't want them having access to it
perpetually, right? Like the chair, we would want the chair to have access to the reviews, or the super administrator to have access to the reviews. But once somebody rolled off the IACUC review panel, we wouldn't want it to be showing up in their reviews, historical reviews, for the rest of time, right?
Got it. Thanks. That just wanted to get clarity on that. More so I can share that with the product management team.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, awesome. Please do.
Here is another reporting question. How much of the reporting function do you use? What about your other admins?
So I actually don't know the answer for the other admins. I always talk to them about the access to the reporting function. So I hope they're using the reporting function, but I can really only speak for myself. I use the reporting function pretty much really heavily once or twice a year when we're preparing our annual reports, for example. But every now and then, the VPR will ask me for a lot of data about a certain competition. And I have found that historically, my competition building hasn't been super conducive to reporting. And so I actually attended a peer spotlight webinar a little while ago about that very thing to help me do a better job at building competitions with reporting in mind. And so I have been slowly but surely going back and revising some of my competitions and templates to yield easier reports for me to look at and review. But I really do look at the reports a lot when I'm contributing my portion to our annual report for things like breakdown of applicants from across campus, funding rate for our internal grants, that sort of thing. So I use it a lot for those types of things.
Thanks, Katie, for sharing that. And if anyone's curious, that Peer Spotlight webinar is from December 2019. Ryan Champagne from the University of Pittsburgh was a panelist, and he presented on building competitions with data reporting in mind.
It was
paraphrasing that title.
Yeah, it was super helpful. It was great. Highly recommend.
And the webinar archives can be found on our website, in case you want to look for that, or you could shoot us a message and we can send you the direct link. Okay, so we're coming close to the end. Time for 2 more questions here. So first, could you describe in a little more detail how you use InfoReady for awards and prizes?
Sure. So for awards and prizes, the competition portal just looks slightly different, and it depends on the process that the administrators want to use. For our awards and prizes, they're awards right now that we just wrapped up the process. We use InfoReady to collect nominations from folks, and so then we do some fancy link management, and we link those nominations to a nominations acceptance portal. And so other folks or people can self-nominate, submit nomination materials, like a statement of nomination, contact info for the nominee, that sort of thing. And then the nominee gets prompted to submit reference letter, emails, and a full CV, or whatever other supporting documents that we've asked for. But that is the one that we use every year for the Office of Research Award, administered award, excuse me. And my dog is barking, so I apologize if you guys can hear that. So that's how we do it. We use a nominations portal and then a nominations materials acceptance, upload, whatever portal. But it depends on how you want to administer the prize or award. Like if everybody is submitting their own materials for consideration, then that's fine. Or if the nominator is responsible for collecting all of those materials and then uploading it, you wouldn't need a 2-part process for that. So everybody does it in a different way. But we have done it most recently that way.
Thanks, Katie. And as a follow-up question to that from the same person, does your office use InfoReady only for internal awards?
No, I use it for limited submissions, internal awards. We collect RFPs for research symposiums. I do manage that nominations and nominations acceptance process for an annual Office of Research award. Yeah, so those are the biggies. And now also we use it for the resumption of research process on campus. So those are all me that manage. I manage all those types of processes through InfoReady.
Thanks, Kay, for elaborating on that. And here we are to the last question. Just 2 minutes to answer this. I'm kidding. I'm not going to put a time limit on you. Have you administered letters of support for grants through InfoReady?
I'm not sure I understand that question exactly. We do collect letters of recommendation or reference letters through InfoReady, and we use that feature of the system. And then sometimes we have folks upload letters of support as optional supplemental documents for internal grants. So we have collected support materials for grants in a couple of different ways utilizing the system. But yes, we have, I guess the short answer is yes, we do use the system for that.
Thanks, Katie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we are nearing the end of our time here, 3 minutes to go. I have some last minute notes for you. First, Katie, thank you so much for being a panelist today. Very much appreciated. Lots of good questions. You answered them with aplomb. And if everyone remembers, Katie also has graciously shared her email address in case would like to reach out to her directly. We have these Peer Spotlight webinars on a monthly basis. So the next one is with some folks from the College of Liberal Arts at the University of Minnesota. So they're going to be discussing managing research at the college level. We'll also talk a little bit about managing some of the grad programs at the college level as well. Most of those are related to research. So that is on Tuesday, August 18th. And we'll have a couple folks there. Jennifer Kaufman from the Office of Research and Graduate Programs in the College of Liberal Arts, and then Christopher Stordelin, who is more on the IT and business analysis side. He's from the Liberal Arts Technologies and Innovation Services Office. Excuse me. We have post-webinar survey we'll be sending today by email. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to follow up with the survey or just to share any general feedback on other types of webinars you'd like to see, or functionality that might be helpful for some of your programs. Excuse me. I didn't drink enough water today. As a reminder, the webinar was recorded and an edited version will be posted to the website in the next week or so. So if you are interested, you can either check or you feel free to email us as well, just to see if it's ready. And then there'll be a link that you're able to follow and share with your colleagues. And lastly, our contact info is on the screen here if you have questions for us. So you can contact my colleague Max Dinerman if you think your organization might benefit from InfoReady, or you can contact me if you want to talk more about your existing license and product functionality and any support questions as well. Now, with that said, final thank you to everyone who attended. Very much appreciated. I know everyone's busy and we're all working from home. So it feels like all of our worlds have collided. So thank you for attending and spending your time with us. With that said, have a great day and a great week, and goodbye.